Hello everyone and welcome to Adult Literacy and Diversity. As you know, this is an online asynchronous course, meaning there are no face-to-face or other scheduled meeting times. This particular design affords you maximum flexibility for taking the class and for completing the work. Because we don't have meetings, you will have assignments to complete each week. This way, I can assess how everyone is doing and determine whether or not I need to make some changes with the materials. Most weeks, the assignment will be a group discussion about the reading. I'm encouraging you to take advantage of the option to post your work as an audio file. This option might provide you a different way to express yourself, and it may save you some time. Adult 650 is a demanding course. You can expect to spend between 6 to 8 hours each week completing the reading and the assignments. Additionally, you will complete a qualitative research project, a mini case study on a literacy practice in your work-life context. But for now, sit back and take a breath. This is the course introduction. Listen and let the information wash over you. As I mentioned, I believe 650 is a demanding course. If I were to visualize it, I would imagine three important parts that you see on the screen in front of you. The weekly reading, and this serves as an example of sociocultural research work. The weekly assignments, and they help you to explore new knowledge from the reading. And finally, the 1, 2, 3 project, and this provides the opportunity to put new knowledge into practice. To get the most out of this course, to be successful, I recommend devoting ample time for the reading and the weekly assignments. As we progress through the semester, the weekly assignments flow into the different parts of the 1, 2, 3 project. In other words, we're completing little parts of the project slowly over the course of the semester. The project has its own module in the Canvas course. Let's slow down for a moment and look at the project more closely. Like the name implies, the 1, 2, 3 project has three main parts. Part 1 is the study design, and this includes a description of the particular literacy practice that you will research, the context, the participants or the people who engage in that practice, and the theoretical framework for your study. Part 2 is the field work, and this is where you will collect your data and do your analysis. This will probably entail 1 to 2 qualitative open-ended interviews and perhaps collecting and analyzing artifacts. Finally, part 3 is the final presentation, and this has two parts, a presentation that you will do for peer feedback, and then the final written paper. All information about the project is contained in the course module as well as the syllabus. Now let's switch gears and take a peek at some of the literature we'll be reading. Our first book is Reading Work by Belfiore et al. It serves as an example of a 1, 2, 3 project, albeit on a much larger scale. It's an ethnographic study of literacy practices in different work settings. We will read different chapters of the book to learn more about doing ethnographic work around adult literacy and looking at the way we write up our findings and tell the story of our data. I've provided a link to the book so you can access it online via the VCU library. We'll start reading this book in week 3. Our next book is Hilary Jenks's Literacy and Power. Her work sits at the intersection of language, literacy, and power. Using Jenks's framework, we take a deeper dive into the way reading a text positions the reader. Depending on your project, Jenks's framework for critical discourse analysis may be an analytical tool you can use with your focal text or other artifacts. I've designed a fun, I hope it's fun, assignment for you to do during week 4 when we read this book. Like the first book, Jenks's book is also available to read online through the VCU library. In addition to the 2 books, there are a number of other articles and chapters we'll be reading. All of them are included in the Canvas course. Now that we've talked a little bit about the work we have to do in this course, let's come back to the idea of adult literacy and our sociocultural lens on this work. Using the sociocultural lens, we want to work toward a definition of reading. So we begin with the idea that reading is the taking in of text, and we think broadly about what a text may be. It's not only written word, it can be spoken, other visual forms, it can be gestural. Building on that, reading becomes the meaning making of the text that we take in. Adding on once again, reading is meaning making of texts embedded in events with social and cultural purposes. So we come toward a definition of reading with our sociocultural lens and consider reading as the meaning making of texts embedded in events with social and cultural purposes in which the reader is somehow positioned. We'll be looking at this positioning of the reader when we get to Hilary Jenks's book. Many of the ideas we've brought together for our definition of reading, including the context and purposes, embeddedness of literacy events in a time and space and social and cultural context, draw from the work of Brazilian educator Paulo Freire. And Freire, or Freire's work, his notion of reading the world. This comes from his book, Pedagogy of the Oppressed. If you don't know who Freire is, you might want to read a little bit about him. You can find the literature noted in the annotated bibliography. I realize this is getting a bit weighty for a course introduction, but hang with me for just a couple more slides. This model comes from Purcell, Gates, Perry, and Bresenio's work on adult literacy. This is their model of a literacy event, and step back a little bit. You don't have to read all the words on the page, but just look at that. I call it the literacy egg or the egg model. To me, that's what I see in that. And what would be the yolk, the darker section in the center bottom, is sort of the beginning of a literacy event, the creation of a text. An author with some agency has created a text for a purpose. This is where perhaps we would get to the idea of the text then positioning the reader in some way. And a text might be some kind of a sign-up sheet or a form or a training record or some other document. But of course, a text can be many things. It doesn't need to only be written. And then that initial text and that purpose, that the egg yolk, it's embedded in these layers of social and cultural context. a history, a time, a space, language, social norms, social taboos, all the things that would go into this larger context to make meaning from that, right? An egg yolk doesn't just appear somewhere without the egg white, right? I love using this model as a metaphor because I think it's just memorable and an easy way to talk about it. And you'll probably hear me or read something I've written that says, that's the egg white, or tell me more about the egg yolk. And we'll see this model more times than you probably care to in the coming semester. But right now, just kind of take it in. That's the literacy egg, and that is just a way to think about how adult literacy as a practice or a particular event is an embedded concept. We've come to the end of the course introduction, and it's time for us to get the semester started. A quick recap of the big ideas we touched on here. We looked at Freire's notion of reading the world when we were developing a sociocultural definition of reading. And we talked about the embeddedness of meaning making always in that social and cultural context. We hinted at the way a text, that reading a text would position the reader, and we'll be looking at this a lot more when we get to Hilary Jenks's book. And then finally, there's the literacy egg. It always makes me smile and giggle. If you can keep that literacy egg in mind, it's a great visual. It's a great way, I think, to conceptualize the way we're going to talk about and study a literacy practice in this course. I think it's just great for that. I really look forward to working with you and getting to know you more this semester. I find the content very rich and exciting, and I just can't wait to see how your work and your projects are going to unfold. So let's get started.